Ellen Younger. Loreto Hotel. Santa Fe 67501. April, 1977. Dearest Ellen, I promised to write you some family history. I am sorry to have been delayed so long in getting started. Your fifth grandfather was Alexander Younger, who came to Virginia, York County, in the 1680s from Worcester, England. At that time there were other Youngers in Worcester and in other places in England. But the Youngers abounded in, and Alexander's brother Andrew lived in Scotland. Scottish Youngers were prominent in the upper Chesapeake Bay trade and along the Rappahannock, even above Fredericksburg. As a 12-year-old boy, John Paul Jones was apprenticed to one of these younger Scottish sea captains. Our Alexander made his way up along the Rappahannock from around Williams Bay and Yorktown through King and Queen County in Essex County. Before 1700, he married Rebecca Mills, daughter of John and Sarah Mills of Essex County. Eventually they settled down on a farm at or near the town of Tappahannock, county seat of Essex, located on the Rappahannock where it begins to narrow down but is still pretty wide. Alexander and Rebecca had 8 children: Thomas, 1700, John, 1702, Elizabeth, 1704, Susanna, 1706, Mary, 1712, Anne, 1715, Jarmetta, 1717, and James, 1725. In 1725 Alexander made his will and died in 1727. I have a copy of his will, no doubt, written by a professional copyist, which reveals dramatically the fancy longhand of that day. Alexander was a tobacco farmer and seems to have acquired some 300 to 400 acres of land. I have the impression that they were pious folk. Although everyone in those days was under the jurisdiction of the Anglican Church, I suspect that Alexander was not an Anglican but a member of one of the evangelical denominations. His will reveals him to be charitable. The will indicates that he owned only one slave, perhaps an aging personal servant. So Alexander was a yeoman farmer whom Thomas Jefferson, many years later, would call the chosen people of God. After a year or two Rebecca married Timothy Driscoll, and they left most of their property to Anne Younger, who married John Price of Middlesex County, VA. In those days the fustest got the mostest. It would be many years before Thomas Jefferson would get the laws of primogeniture repealed. So the oldest child, male, got the most. Poor 7-year-old James, the youngest of the 8, got the least. James is your 4th grandfather. He is also a mystery man, somewhat intriguing, perhaps because of what we do not know about him. James in time married Anna Nash, and they settled down in Spotsylvania County, which is adjacent to and lies to the southwest of Fredericksburg. Anna's family were originally from Middlesex County. In these northern neck counties along the Rappahannock the Youngers were acquaintances of families bearing such names as Pruitt, Durrett, Robinson, Minor, Carter, Nell, and Newton. You will remember that Blake Newton is Toots' granddad. Watch out for the name Nell, which will again show up in this story. As late as 1750 James Younger was in Spotsylvania County. Soon the scene would shift. On a joyful day in 1753, a small band of hardy settlers in the back county of North Carolina welcomed into their midst James Younger, the Baptist preacher, and his wife Anna and a little daughter Anna. The settlement was on Cool Run of the headwaters of Abbott's Creek in Rowan County, now Davidson County. Lacking a formal education, James Younger influenced people by his pious life and earnest exhortations, and led them to establish Abbott's Creek Baptist Church. One of the mysteries: where had James come from? Not from Spotsylvania County, VA, but from the Welsh Nook settlement in Craven County, SC, which is said to have been peopled by Welshmen from Delaware. There is no Craven County, SC today, but there was then. Details on Welsh Nook. James was not an ordained minister, so he brought in the zealous elder Daniel Marshall from a nearby congregation to take over. James continued to live in the Abbott's Creek community and procured the land on which the church now stands. His daughter Anna Evans lived to be 97 and is buried in the church cemetery. On the eve of the American Revolution, the people in the back country of the colonies seethed with discontent. In North Carolina, their grievances were directed not so much against King George III as against the seaboard gentry in alliance with the royal governor and his hand-picked council composed of an inner ring which ruled the colony. Taxes and fees were too high, courthouses were too inaccessible, and local government impotent and exclusive. In North Carolina, the antagonisms were strong and exaggerated and culminated in the organization of the regulator associations. In 1770, violence broke out along the frontier. Governor Tryon called out the militia and marched into the back country. In 1771, a battle at Alamance led to total defeat of the regulators. Some of the leaders were hanged. Hundreds of the rank and file took the oath of allegiance to the government. Thousands fled across the mountains to the fertile lands along the Watauga and Halstone rivers. James Younger was a participant in these stirring events. Along with more than 200 others, he signed Regulators Advertisement No. 9, which petitioned the governor and council for smaller fees for deeds and protested the exactions and extortions of several officers, but when his resistance was broken, he joined 21 others in a petition for clemency. Evidently his plea for clemency was granted. He continued to purchase bits of land now and then, and in 1783, the Revolution now ended, he moved into Chatham County, North Carolina, just south and west of Durham and Chapel Hill. What happened to him the rest of his life, where he lived precisely, where he died and is buried, is not known. He lived on until perhaps 1805, or more accurately he died sometime before 1805. In 1801, for the affectionate love he bore and do have for his son Thomas Younger, he willed to that son 300 acres of land in Chatham County. This Thomas Younger, born in 1762, is your third grandfather. Other children of James and Anna Nash Younger were Anna, who married James Evans, T. James married Ann Teague, John married Rebecca McCaslin, Elizabeth married Aaron Wellborn, and Rebecca married James Wellborn. Our Thomas is a greater mystery man than his father James. He married Mary Nell, daughter of John Nell of Spotsylvania County, VA. He had many children, said to be 13. One of the sons, Thomas, is your second grandfather, who moved to the Tomahawk community near St. Joe AR. Another son, Alexander, went from North Carolina to Tennessee to MO to Corsicana, Texas, where there is a Younger cemetery. Mary Nell's husband, Thomas, disappears in Williamson County. T.N. Mary Nell Younger is said to be buried in Stockton, Missouri, 96 years old. This will have to be checked out. Note, added in pencil to the letter by D.Y. Checked this is right. Have to end this installment. We'll pick up the next installment with our mysterious Thomas who disappears in Williamson County, TN. For most of this information I am indebted to a good friend, Maddie Ellen Tribb of Houston, Texas. Ask a lot of questions which occur to you and someday, hope to fill in the gaps. Mother and I are fine but hard put to keep things going at the pavilion and farm too. You can be sure that the two Palomino Marrays get more attention than I do. Love. Dad. Edward Eugene Younger. January 16, 1978. There is mystery surrounding the death of Thomas Younger, husband of Mary Nell, son of James Younger of North Carolina, and grandson of Alexander Younger of Essex County, VA. People who have worked carefully on Younger family history have been unable to ascertain when this Thomas died, perhaps in the late 1830s, where he died, nor where buried. Several years ago my father, William Randolph Younger, may have given me the answer as to how he died. In April 1955, Ryan Conversation passed on to me this bare story which had come down to him from his father, John London Younger, and his mother, Minerva Skelton Younger. My father's great-grandfather of TN gathered up herds of horses and mules and sold them down south. This fits in with my understanding of the history of the area and the period. Central TN and KY abounded with mules and horses, the main source of energy in those days, and supplied the markets of the plantation deep south in such states as MS and AL. He had collected his herd, and for the trip his wife made him a suit of clothes, with large, new eagle buttons. He departed, somewhere sold his herd, received the money, disappeared, and was never heard from. But later bones were found in a cave near where he had sold the herd, with the bones were several eagle buttons. The ostensibly murdered man seems to have been the Thomas identified above in the first paragraph, formerly of NC, then of Williamson and Maury counties, TN. My great-grandfather, his son also named Thomas, was born in NC in 1791, marred, a second wife, Ellen London, born in NC in 1805, lived in TN and KY, and in 1854 migrated to the Tomahawk community, Searcy, Arkansas. To confuse matters somewhat more, it seems that the seemingly murdered Thomas had still another son named Thomas, born in 1798, married Sarah Church, Migrated from Williamson Maury counties, TN to Cedar County, MO, and is buried in the Younger Cemetery of Stockton, Missouri. Note from Brownie, this is why the list of Youngers appeared in the Maury County newsletter. Ha! By Ed Younger. End.